Hey everybody, doing a little bit of a different style of video here. Just kind of wanted to answer a question I kind of get asked frequently by, probably more young people. Maybe you're in high school or getting ready to graduate high school, going to college, and you're thinking about getting into motion design, motion graphics, animation, and really this can kind of go for anything, even if you're looking at cinematography or any kind of video production, editing, stuff like that. But a common question I get is, do I have any advice for people who are just starting the journey with all this stuff, motion graphics, and kind of advice that I would give nowadays, now that I've kind of been, in the field for, probably 20 years now. And then freelance for the majority of those, and then small business owner or small agency owner as Chomp today. And I think what I'm going to talk about, or how I'm going to answer this question, is there's no real one path to do any of this. I do think the creative and design field is unique, and I think it's different from a lot of other jobs. And it's also another layer of complexity that gets added to it is if you ever want to freelance or create your own small business. So, as someone who went freelance, this is the advice that I will kind of give for that. And the number one thing I think I would recommend if you're just starting out, if you're thinking about college, if you're thinking about freelancing, you have two kind of options you can take. One, if you kind of just want to jump into this world of motion graphics or art or videography, and this is going to be controversial probably to a lot of people, I would not recommend, or I do not think you need a traditional 4-year college degree in, let's say, art or something like that. I feel like for the majority of work out there, you're not going to need your typical 4-year degree in that. And a lot of people will think that, I need a bachelor's degree to apply for jobs and this and that. And I just have never, and I've worked, before I worked for myself, I did work for other studios and agencies. And I think that's really important to kind of start and get a good foundation, get some mentors that way. But coming from someone who got a 4-year degree, I got a 4-year degree, I paid for it myself. I didn't have the loans or anything. But the degree and the route that I went at the time, again, this is over 20 years ago now, college was a fraction of what it is now. My degree ended up being in art and film and television, but it's a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree with that as an emphasis. I realized once I got out of college and I started working at actual studios or production companies or even freelancing for myself that I really didn't get that much out of college. And I don't really regret it in one sense, but looking back, I don't think I would need to do it, because if you're in high school right now and you already know that this is something you want to do, there are just vastly so much more amount of resources online available to you that I just don't feel like it renders a 4-year college degree necessary. Now, here's 2 stipulations of what I would recommend for a college degree. One, if you're getting your college paid for, or you're doing a scholarship, or you can get it for extremely cheap, then yeah, higher education might be okay. But the number one thing you want to stay away from is any sort of debt. And that's not necessarily a business tip, that's just a life and investing tip. And as you get into the future, we're going to start looking at, purchasing homes and all this other stuff. Debt is a nightmare to have. And the less amount of debt that you have, the more of a financial runway you give yourself in any sort of endeavor that you want to take on next, whether it's starting a small business, Like I said, getting a home. You know, homes are a good debt to have, but student loan debt is just, it's kind of unnecessary. Now, that's the first probably road or tip I would recommend. Now, the second thing, and if college might be okay for you, is if you're not quite sure what you kind of want to do, or if you know, like, hey, I want to go on the other side of my high school career or whatever it might be. I want to be a motion graphic artist or cinematographer, whatever it might be, and you know that you want to go freelance, you want to work for yourself, you want to start your own business and all of that stuff, then I would kind of recommend college. It's kind of something I wish I would have done differently now, but all I would recommend is not a arts degree or film school or anything like that. I would do a focus on business. And the reason I say that about business is because learning the business side of the stuff and getting comfortable presenting options and talking money, you have to be comfortable talking about money. That takes a little while to build up. But if you already know more of the business side of things, and this is an always ongoing learning topic. And I'm still, obviously learning business stuff now, and I will continue to learn stuff because you'll always be learning it. But I do feel like if I would have done something like a business degree that would have brought into my motion graphics and animation business today, I would have just been that much more further ahead than where I'm at today. Otherwise, outside of that, I guess there's a third option I would recommend. If you are looking at more design, animation, motion graphics, then I think the next best course of, if you do want to do some kind of school, I guess I would recommend some sort of art or design school. Maybe that's like a technical institute or whatever it might be. The reason I would recommend that is because design, whether you go into animation, again, I'll bring up cinematography, maybe a little bit less for cinematography, but motion graphics, design, animation, if you have a really good foundation in just the aesthetic and how a design should look great, that's going to be 90% of the battle to make your animations look good. Storyboard artists or other production artists do is they might have just the most amazing design sense. They'll make up style frames, they'll design a look, they'll animate themselves, or if you're part of an agency or a team, they're taking everything that you just recommended or drew out, your nice designs, and they're going to hand that off to an animation team and match your look. So having the design eye first and foremost, I think, is very helpful just going on forward. And that's something you can keep learning, studying, watching things that really inspire you and taking notes of why that looks good or why that might look cinematic or just have a nice design aesthetic to it, or why that commercial, during the Super Bowl pops out and stands out to you. That's all a design eye. And the faster you can learn that, the further ahead you're also going to be in your career, and just it's going to benefit you in all realms and all aspects of your career. Another question I get asked a lot is, what software should I be using? And this is a tough and very tricky question. Chomp and kind of our bread and butter, we're still locked into Adobe After Effects. We're still editing with Premiere with a little bit of DaVinci Resolve. Main 3D application is Cinema 4D. And now I've been using Cinema 4D for a long time, so I'm locked into that. If it's someone brand new, they need to jump into a program and they just need to start getting their feet wet, I don't think there's anything wrong with all these free resources that are out there. So the tough one you're going to have a hard time replacing if you're focusing on a lot of motion graphics and animation is going to be After Effects. There's not a lot of alternatives for that, so that's tough. But let's talk about some of the other major players, because at the end of the day, these are all costing a crazy amount of money and fees with all the new monthly subscriptions and licenses they have now. So quickly, let's talk about the big players. Everyone knows what they are, but let's just go over them. 3D applications. Blender has come such a long way that we have had a lot of talks about switching over to Blender ourselves. The thing that keeps us locked into Cinema 4D, and this isn't trying to slam anyone, is we're not locked into Cinema 4D because it's so amazing. We're literally only locked in Cinema 4D because of legacy projects and existing client projects. A lot of the clients work that we're doing, whether it's for aerospace people or you know, these high-end companies, they want all the project files, and they're all still on Maya, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, and they always want to archive all their project files in case they need to, you know, make little tweaks or edit them down the road. And because of that legacy sort of just connection of, we get project files from people that are in Cinema 4D and we give project files that are Cinema 4D, that's really the only main reason keeping us from Blender. Now, all of our other projects outside of those clients, could we use Blender? Yeah, of course, but we haven't because we're so locked into Cinema 4D, we don't have a good reason right now to juggle 2 3D applications. But that was a long-winded answer of alternatives. You can still learn everything you need to with Blender. I'll be honest, I do think what Blender's doing, I do think they're the future, and they're doing a great job with all their just open source stuff. Other assets, you know, on top of Blender, you have all of Blender's, all their third-party render engines that they're using, you know, like Eevee and stuff like that. That's good to learn. Of course, learning Unreal Engine for cinematics, creating environments, combining that with other pieces of software, and it's free. Again, that's going to be a great resource, and that can be a good tool even just for rendering. Whoa! In terms of editors, I think editors is an obvious one. I would recommend DaVinci Resolve, because that is not only going to take care of your editing and not having to get locked into Premiere. Super cheap, super powerful. There is a free alternative. The paid version, 1 perpetual license, not that expensive. And that's going to cover audio, editing, color, obviously. And then the main thing also too is if you start to dabble in visual effects is Fusion. And the reason Fusion would be good to know is it's a node-based editor or node-based compositor, such as Nuke. Nuke is crazy expensive, but Fusion is picking up a lot of steam. It's super powerful. And that's just another good alternative. You get all of that in one package, 1 perpetual license. And I gotta be honest, in just a small amount of small amount of uses we've used it for, it's just way more powerful. And it doesn't crash like Premiere. The tough ones are gonna be hard to beat are Photoshop and After Effects and Illustrator. Of course, you have the Affinity Design Suite if you wanna dabble. But in my experience, if you're doing client work or they either want files or provide you files or anything, it's almost always still After Effects and Illustrator and even Photoshop. So those ones are going to be tough, but these are all skills that you want to learn. And I think, you know, there's a lot of more in-depth topics we can kind of go on with this. You know, we can really dive deeper into this and really kind of hone in on other questions that you guys have. But these are definitely sort of the main questions that people asked on how to get started. I think to end it, another big key thing that I briefly mentioned to get started is you have to get into the software. You have to start learning everything. You have to get hours behind everything. Think of motion graphics and animation and all this as basically a trade, because you're providing a skill and a service for other people who want to pay you to do it. And you can watch tutorials and videos all day, every day. I used to watch, 2 to 3 hours every night before I went to bed, and I still watch videos. But the thing is, you can watch 100 hours of tutorials, but unless you're starting to practice some of that stuff, it's not helping you out too much. But the other benefit of watching just the vast amount of tutorials and content that's out there is it can inspire ideas. So if someone comes to you and they want to ask for something and you might not exactly know how to do it, but you kind of remember a tutorial, something that you saw a while ago, that could, you could always go back to that video. Maybe you save a playlist on YouTube, or you make a little notes file of all the different sections like VFX, infographics, 3D, and you can start to organize and reference that if you need to. You can pull that kind of out of your back pocket and use that as inspiration for a project that a client might want a similar look to that. And that's another thing we can talk about if you guys want to learn more. With this sort of career stuff or business stuff, as always, feel free to leave a question. Maybe we can do some more, walking or driving and talking videos. like this to help, help people out. So yeah, hope this helps anyone out who asked that question. Thanks for reaching out on YouTube. And as always, guys, we'll see you in the next video, whatever that may be. So we'll see you then, guys. Have a good one. Thanks. Let these people with their dogs pass really quick so no one gets scared. And everyone knows what we're doing here. And they go. Don't worry, citizens, I will not run you over today.